Hiya. I want to talk about the new Star Wars movie and why I don't think it's very good, why I think it's non canonical. This is the first movie made since George Lucas sold to Disney, and so that's an obvious tie in point. So, what I want to say is I went to this movie, I watched it through. I enjoyed it okay. I came out the other side thinking, oh, that was nice. And what I liked about it, I liked seeing those characters again. I watched the original Star Wars movie when it came out in the theatre. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan. I did enjoy the movie though. So, that was a while ago. And it was really nice to see them again. It's like, just having them there that aged. And I think part of why I liked it is, they weren't pretending to be young in the movie. So, it was like, oh my God, I haven't seen you for God knows how long, Han. Leia, Luke, nice to see you again. Time's passed, we both got older. Great. So that kind of stuff was nice. The movie was well cut, it looked good. It was well paced at the end, and it felt, oh, is it over already? But coming out of it, when I started to think about it, the experience started to disappear. Now, I will say, I've gradually become a Star Wars fan. As I say, when I saw the Star Wars in the theatre originally in 1977, I liked it, but I didn't become a big fanboy. And I remember round about the turn of the century, I think, before the prequels had begun, watching Star Wars on a small television screen and thinking, what? It was like the movie had disappeared, like the magic's gone. So I did have that experience. And I remember when the prequels came out, people that were fans talking about them and how disappointed they were. And I went, well, the originals weren't that amazing anyway. But funny thing is, the prequels, I went and watched the prequels, and the prequels brought me back into Star Wars. And I do like the original trilogy, so it's not as though that experience I had of watching it and thinking it was junk stayed. It didn't. And why do I like Star Wars? So that's one of the questions that I started to ask myself as I came out and thought about this movie and thought about it, what it did and what it didn't do. And there's been a lot of criticism about it because it rehashes New Hope, which it does. There's just no arguing that. There's just parallel after parallel after parallel between New Hope and The Force Awakens. But yeah, so what was it that I liked about it? I think they are iconoclastic movies, and now I love iconoclasm. I love people that have got a quirky vision like Captain Beefheart. like John Anderson of Yes, and the work he's done with Yes, Frank Zappa, um, Jonathan Richman, Mark Bolan. These are iconoclastic artists. Um, Lots of others. John Cooper Powys. I've just done a blog on Colin Wilson, Brian Wilson. Odd, quirky, but sometimes really successful, sometimes not. Like William Blake. He just continued doing his own thing, and he had about 30 fans or whatever, but he just didn't care and went on with it. Now, George Lucas is like that. Now, the original Star Wars movie, it was a huge hit, but nobody thought it was going to be a big hit. Not even George Lucas, He wanted to make that movie, and when he made it, he had plans for the other ones. And it's one of the reasons why the sequels aren't just retreads. The Return of the Jedi does do the Death Star thing again. Why'd you have to do that? But in the main, those movies are all different. And they tell a story, and it's all good. And I put it that the prequels do that as well. George Lucas got a lot of criticism from the fans, but basically, well, I had a story and I wanted to tell it, and I told it. And I really admire that, and I think the prequels, that in fact all of the Star Wars movies, they're like a really gifted amateur. They get Carrie Fisher said, you can write lines like this, but you can't speak them. The language is not common usage. It's mythic and it's clunky, but again, it's part of what makes it iconoclastic. And the original trilogy had a look and feel. They had design for what the Empire's machinery would look like and so forth, what their uniforms would be, and it's authoritarian and it's militaristic. Now, when George Lucas went to the prequels, the design was quite different. It was futuristic and diverse. Now that's because the Republic was a democracy, and you have more freedom of expression. We tend to think that development is linear. You go from primitive to advanced. But that's not what happens. And the prequels created later, they look flashier and they look more modern. And I think the point that, from a design point of view, that Lucas is getting across is that there was a form that having an authoritarian government stifles creativity. So you don't get that modern, sexy, slinky, futuristic work anymore. You get controlling, hard, blocky sort of technology. So I think it it works. From a creative point of view, that distinction works. Now, one of the other key features about Star Wars is that it's a mythological work. So I don't know if the mythology is that fantastic or anything, but it's there, it's central, and it's dramatized. You have Luke on a desert planet, which looks kind of biblical, and Luke, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, biblical name. So Luke's sort of the hero figure, the boy hero figure, and he comes across an old hermit, old Ben Kenobi, who he discovers Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is a master Jedi. And he tells him about the Force, this the Force is all around us, it supports us, it's in us, it gives power and so forth. And, it sounds a bit like, I don't know, God, being, consciousness, bliss, non-personalized depictions of God. And Obi-Wan teaches Luke about the Force, so he becomes a teacher, sort of like Jesus or a guru figure. You have the guru and the pupil, the Jedi and the Padawan, the master, the pupil. Luke gets taught to trust his intuition, tune into the Force, and then he's able to, all he really achieves in that first one is that he is a fighter pilot for the rebellion, and they blow up the Death Star. Now you've got to do a perfect hit on the Death Star to hit the spot, and it starts chain reaction. Death Star explodes. So you got a computer in the fighter ship and X-wing, whatever, and Luke's flying along with that, and then he hears Obi-Wan's voice. What I should also say there is, by this time, Obi-Wan has died. Now, Obi-Wan was fighting with Darth Vader, the baddie in the movie, and Obi-Wan says, "If you strike me down, I will become greater than you can imagine." And then he just puts his lightsaber up, and Darth Vader swings, kills him, without Obi-Wan defending himself. So he sacrifices himself. Sound familiar? Oh, didn't Jesus do something like that? Anyway, Darth Vader kills him, and but when he dies, his cape collapses. Nobody has his body perhaps ascended. So So yeah, keep going. Um, so, but that's not the end for Luke. Luke still has this relationship with Obi-Wan. He hears his voice, and and through the movies, he sees Obi-Wan with light around him. So Luke is doing a run to blow up the Death Star, and Obi-Wan says, basically, trust to the Force. So he turns off the computer, trust to the Force, he hits the bullseye, blows up the Death Star. Now, so he was doing something that all the other fighter pilots could do. He did it better by relying on the Force. Not way super Jedi powers, but good. And he does that in the first movie. The second movie, he gets more powers, but then he goes and he has a vision of Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan tells him to go to this planet, which makes no sense from a practical point of view. It's wasted time when they should be working up the rebellion. But so it's a leap of faith. He goes to this planet, this swamp planet, and finds a Jedi Master who isn't at all like what he expected. He expected some big powerful guy, and it's this little short green guy, old green guy, acting like a kid. But then again, he's overcoming his expectations and so forth. Anyway, that kind of mythology and so forth is throughout the movies. I think with the prequels, we get a situation where you look at the Jedi. So there's actually tons of Jedi in the prequels, lots of Jedi, and they have been co-opted into a Jedi Council. So they've got a political role, a peacekeeping role within the Republic. Now, I think Lucas is actually a bit, what would I say, critical of this. It's like with the Christian religion, it became the religion of the Roman Empire. And at that stage, the religion gained something, but it also lost something. That kind of tie-in with secular power corrupts it to a certain degree. And I think Lucas is saying something about that. Whereas you saw Obi-Wan and Yoda in the original trilogy as hermit figures with no real political working political ties, in the prequels, they were very tied up in politics, and I think part of the fall of the Jedi can also be put upon the Jedi themselves. Obviously, the Emperor Palpatine is a Sith Lord, he's a baddie, and he deliberately plots to undermine democracy, undermine the Jedi, kill off the Jedi, in fact. So, he's definitely the primary villain and remains so, whereas Anakin, it's a sort of a redemption story, a fall and a rise story, which is quite nice. That he falls into temptation and then comes out again. So, all right. So, I think that's enough background now. So I just want to make some comments now about the new movie, and I would say that the new movie is out of canon, with Lucas handing it on. Disney have not have made their first movie, and they've shown basically that it's the end of an era. All right, why do I say that? Maybe one last point about Lucas. Lucas has been the arbiter. He strikes me as quite a introspective guy, and he's worked out what Star Wars is, and he has a sense of it, and he lets little bits out, and he lets movies out. But I would say that, he cares about it, and he's got very distinct ideas of what Star Wars is and isn't. And basically, I'd say that, he's the guy. Lightning. But, somebody could have taken it on in the spirit. We'll see. So, I mentioned before that Episode 7, The Force Awakens, is a rehash of A New Hope. Many people have pointed out the plot similarities. They think, there's another Death Star, got to destroy it. Main character's on a desert planet, and blah-de-blah. The robot comes down with an important piece of information for the Rebel Alliance, the whatever. The parallels are abundant. Now, what's wrong with this, from, obviously going in, I sort of asked, well, what's going to happen next? After those 6, what's the next step? And the main problem with this movie for me is that it basically shits on everything that went before. It's like says, you had this 6-movie arc to the defeat of the Emperor, the redemption of Anakin, and the defeat of the Empire. And then you get to the start and you find, the Empire's going by a different name now, but it's still there. It hasn't been defeated at all. So that shits on the success of the story arc of the first 6. And, if you're going to do that, then the story should be how it was defeated, but that's the starting point of this movie. So that really annoys me. But it's not just that. It's the characters too are all losers. You know, you had Leia, Luke, and Han. What do you find? Han has gone back to being a smuggler after taking up the altruism of the cause. Han and Leia have broken up, so they're failures as parents. Their son has gone to the dark side. And not only that, there was a lot of talk in the Return of the Jedi, and it could have been earlier, about Leia, that the Force was strong in her. And yet there's no indication in this movie that Leia has become a Jedi. Why not? Again, you know, she's just grinding on with the rebellion because that's what she's comfortable with. That's what's portrayed. So loser, loser, loser. And Luke had started in Canterbury. It had failed when Ben Solo, who's the baddie guy, had turned bad, and then Luke had buggered off. So he had failed as well, failed as a Jedi teacher. And, you know, it's not really a case of like Yoda going into the wilderness. The Republic had fallen and all the Jedi had passed. And in episode 3, I think Yoda did talk about teaching Obi-Wan about getting in contact with his dead master Qui-Gon. So the conquering death, not in the way that Darth Sidious, the Emperor, tried to conquer death, which is keep the body alive, but conquer death by not being scared of death and realizing that the spirit transcends it. And you see that in the original trilogy. Okay, so yeah, that really bugs me that they were complete failures. And if you're going to do that, that needs to be the story of how they failed. It's not. That's the story because they want to tell episode 4 again, basically. So there's a complete disjunction, and which sucks, basically. It sucks badly. It's a spit on the original 6 movies. That sucks. Now, the mythology. I'd say, you know, you've got the main character Rey, and the story is called The Force Awakens, and what a misnomer. There's Rey is a feminist figure. By that I mean she's a strong woman who doesn't need help from any man. And they make that clear, you know, what's his name, Finn, tries to save her, grabs her hand a couple of times. She says, "Don't hold my hand, I'm quite well, can do quite well, thank you." And she obviously can. She defends herself with the staff right when he meets her, and you know, there's a shot later, and Finn has fallen over, and Rey helps him up, and it's obvious that the message they're giving is she's the hero, and she's the one that's saving anybody. Now, I should also say that, in fact, Luke gets saved a number of times, and Luke gets saved by Leia one time. But in this, really, nobody saves Rey, and nobody is Rey's master. So Luke had a master, Anakin had a master, Rey doesn't have a master. No guru-disciple relationship is dramatized in the movie. Now, there's some talk about that maybe Luke trained her when she was 5 or whatever, and there's been a mind wipe sort of thing happen. But if that's the case, what I'm saying is the mythological relationship is not getting dramatized. Basically, the filmmaker's saying it's not important. It's not the thing that I want to say. And it's not dramatized. So, but as we haven't seen any of that. All that you see is that Rey has no master. You had Leia. If you wanted a female master, you could have had Leia. But what happens in this movie, again, Rey flies the Millennium Falcon, and you see her in the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo, who knows that ship inside out. And again, it shows that she's got nothing to learn from Han. There's only one thing that Han says that makes an impression on her, and that is the Force was real. But, Han's not a Jedi Master. And she has no Jedi Master. And yet, she uses the Jedi mind trick. She has telekinesis. The lightsaber flies to her hand. And at the end, she defeats the villain in a lightsaber battle. Now, it took Luke basically 3 movies to get to that stage, and he had to learn humility and submit to 2 masters to do that. To me, this is saying it's sacrilege. It's sacrilege that Rey can do this without a master. It's undermining the mythology, which is to me, basically the heart of this Star Wars mythology. So that's the other thing I want to say is I talked about design, the different design for the Republic and for the Empire. Now, the First Order is supposed to be something new, but the design that they use is all from the Empire. And so the design isn't saying anything new. And another case of just recycling. And you don't have a story that goes further, basically. The story pushes back into where it was and tries to recycle it and fails. Okay, I think that's about what I want to say. Thank you. Bye.